YouTube, what it do? It's your boy BankRoll99, and I got another video for you, and this is going to be a part of my daily fantasy series of videos that I'm going to do, because as you know, I play season-long fantasy, but I also play daily fantasy, and people don't realize that there is a big difference in the strategies of when you're doing your daily fantasy versus your season-long fantasy. So the first strategy that I'm going to help you with is how to build your bankroll, and where you can deposit some money at the beginning of the season and have it last all season long without having to redeposit, but yet build up and have a chance to play some of these other tournaments and contests as well. So to start off with, and you better listen up, it is more important to choose the correct contest than it is to choose your lineups. So I'm gonna say it again, it is more important what contest you choose than what lineups you choose. So what do I mean by this? Well, there's multiple types of lineups within the daily fantasy, whether you're playing on DraftKings, whether you're playing on FanDuel. There's many kinds, and sometimes people get lost within all the contests, especially for new beginners, because they're not sure of which ones that they want to choose or not. So what I recommend is to only mess with two contests to start off with. The first one is being your 50-50 contest. So let me explain what 50-50 contests are. A 50-50 contest is when X amount of players are in a contest, and to win a payout, all you have to do is finish in the top 50% of the players playing in that contest. So for example, say if there's 100 players and it's a $20 contest, then you're betting $20, and all you have to do to double your money and win 40 is just finish in the top 50% of the field. So the 50th player all the way up to the number one player, and then you double your money. That's what a 50-50 contest is. And the second type of contest that I'm going to talk about are your big tournaments. Now your big tournaments are what you're going to see if you ever see a commercial about the $1 million payouts, and pretty much all the commercials you've ever seen about fantasy football. Those are all related to the big tournaments they have. And we're going to talk about the tournaments and how they differ, because with tournaments you're usually playing with at least 100,000 players in that particular contest or more. And so the strategies are quite different when you're doing a lineup for your tournament than versus when you're doing a lineup for your 50-50s, especially with the amount of players that are in these contests. You know, drastically changes the percentage chances you have of winning money or even the payout in those contests, a high payout. So that's what I'm gonna get into. We're gonna discuss the different strategies of building your teams and building your rosters and building your lineups when it comes to building your bankroll with the 50-50s, and then also trying to cash out for the huge payouts that can change your life with these tournaments they have. So the first thing I'm going to talk about are the 50-50 contests. And the reason why I'm starting with this is because this is going to be your bread and butter throughout the year to build up your bankroll. All you see with these advertisements with the $1 million winnings and things like that, let's be realistic. It's probably not going to be me, and it's probably not going to be you this year that could win the $1 million. But if we start off with the bankroll, deposit some money in there that you can afford, and then build it as it goes, and then take stabs at the tournaments, you'll never know. You could be able to hit the $1 million if you're lucky enough, but more than likely you'll be able to win, you know, $500 here, $200 here, maybe $1,000, possibly $10,000, $25,000. There's many payout lines that you can hit throughout all of the contests. So we're going to start with the 50-50s because these have the lowest payout lines. So when I say payout lines, what do I mean by that? So if you play a tournament, let's say, for you to crack the top percentage to get paid out when there's 250,000 or 500,000 people, I mean, you're looking at scoring above 300 points, you know, each week in and week out, as based on last year's numbers. You were not going to place and win money, you know, we hitting under 300 points. However, in 50-50 contests, you're talking about your average payout line was around 165 points. Which one is easier to hit for you and for me? Of course, it's 165. Then over 300. So this is why I say that your bread and butter is going to be your 50-50 contest. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how we get to those, kind of see what we're working with. So right here I have, this is FanDuel. So if you go to FanDuel, and you can do DraftKings, they all have the same things, but we'll use FanDuel for this example purpose. But say if you go to NFL, and then the first thing you want to do is go over here and hit 50-50 and multipliers. We'll talk about multipliers on another video. The pay line you have, it's not just you have to finish in the top 50, you have to finish like in the top 10 people or the top 350 people out of 10,000 people. So the odds of winning in the lower payout line are not as great as 50-50s. But over here with the 50-50s and multipliers is where you'll find the double ups. And the double ups is what I'm specifically saying is this is what you need to be your prime, your butter. Every time you do contests every week, you need to have majority of them your 50-50 double ups. So the first thing you do is you go in here, and then what I do is just type in D. And then that's going to filter all of your double ups. So it'll get the multipliers out the way, the triple ups, the quadruple ups, and all the things like that. It'll remove all those, and you're only dealing with the double. So the first tip that I'm going to tell you is, based off last year, the sweet spot of how many people you wanted in the contest was about 200. They go up to 1,000, 10,000, or we can go low as 20 people. But every week in and week out, the lowest pay line where you hit in the top 50 to get paid out, and the score that you had to be above was usually around 165 and the lowest. So I'm gonna say shoot for contests with around 100, 200 to 300 people in them. So if we take a look at it, you scroll down, so you see right here there's 850 people in those contests. You scroll down, 284, there's a sweet spot for you, and then that's $2. And then you can scroll down, maybe you can do some $5 ones. You see there's 681 people, 227, that's your sweet spot right there. And then you go on and down into 10 and 25, and even go into the $50 and $100 like that. So this is my strategy of what I do. So let's say you deposit $25 or $50 in your bank. What I say is take half of that, or 60 to 70% of it, and that's the money that you want to do multiple contests in. And the lineups that you do for daily with the 50-50s is totally different from your tournament lineups. So when you're doing your tournament lineups versus your daily lineups is where you want to go with the most best players you can possibly get. So we're talking about your Aaron Rodgers, your Cam Newtons, your Devontae Freemans, your Antonio Browns, Gronkowski. These are the lineups. This contest is where you want to go with your safe players, because remember, we're not trying to be all fancy and score 300 plus points in these. We just want to hit the minimum pay line so we could be in the top 50% of the field and double up our money. So what you want to do is you want to pick your best lineup, and do not do no more than 3 different lineups, but I recommend only doing 2 lineups. And then people say, Bako, if I pick a bad lineup, then I lose all my money if I'm in 10 50-50s. That's not the case. You got to remember, it's the top 50% of the field. So say if you do 5 contests and you have a lineup. In one contest, if your lineup didn't do so great, and in that particular contest there happens to be just better players who put up higher scores, okay, so 1 out of 5 contests you participated in, you didn't win. But what if the other 4 contests don't have as many good players in those contests, and those payout lines are lower overall? Then it is very possible, and I did it on multiple occasions last year, where one lineup I would lose 2 lineups or 2 contests, that lineup would lose, but the same exact lineup won 4 other contests. So don't think that you do one lineup, oh, it's all or nothing. If you do bad, then you don't get paid out of any of them, because that's not the case. Now if you just have a bad week where all the luck just doesn't go your way, then that is possible. But if you do a solid lineup, like I said, with your with most of the good players you can fit, and then you're going to make a little difference with some of your picks, your second and third to the last pick, where you may have to go with someone like a Marvin Jones or a Dante Moncrief. Those are the type of players that put you over the edge. But you can have a good base and foundation by drafting players that are going to get you at least 15 to 20 points. This is where you'll get your points, and this is where you'll be easy to be able to double up even if you miss on 1 or 2 players, versus your tournaments. Because your tournaments, you're trying to play contrarian picks. You're trying to pick some more sleepers. You probably can pick 1 or 2 players, because if you're in a tournament and you get Rob Gronkowski and 70% of the field has Rob Gronkowski, then whenever they score 40 points with Gronkowski, you score 40 points. So you don't separate yourself as much when you're doing it with the tournaments versus when you're doing it with the dailies. So in the dailies, you want to go ahead and pick the best lineup you can buy with your money, because you want for sure safe picks for your 50-50s. So now let's talk about tournaments. Now tournaments is where you're really going to test your skills at. This is where you have to score as many points as you possibly can to be successful when you're dealing with these tournaments. The amount of people in the tournaments are way greater than all of your other contests. Like I said, you're dealing with up to 100,000 people in one contest that you're playing against. And this is where your lineup really matters, and you really have to know your fantasy football and do your research on a week-to-week basis. Because when you do a lineup, out of say 100,000 people, they're going to be a percentage of people who are really good, almost like sharks. Then you're going to have a big percentage of people who are not good, but probably will get lucky with some of the bigger names and things like that. And then you have kind of like your middle of the pack, where you have a real good decent lineup, but they just didn't hit. So your job when you're doing the tournaments is you have to pick about 2 or 3 players that you can afford, but it's more about the value when you're dealing with your top end players, like your Julio Jones, your Cam Newtons, your Antonio Browns, Gronkowskis, all those top tier players. You're gonna have to get about 2 or 3 of them. But this is where you have to look at the salary, because you need to save some of your salary for when you get to the bottom half of your lineup, where you have to go contrarian on a lot of these picks. And even with your main players, you have to go contrarian. So I'll give an example. So let's say Aaron Rodgers is $11,000 salary to pick him. Well, you know that a lot of people are going to pick Aaron Rodgers, so you want to pick the players with the least percentage owned. And when you start the tournaments, FanDuel will show you the percentage owned of that player. So you may want to look at the matchups and see which quarterback is going against a bad pass defense and could potentially put up the same big numbers as a Cam Newton or an Aaron Rodgers. So you have to really look at the matchups on a week-to-week basis and do a lot of contrarian picks, because there's so many people in these contests. You have to do something to separate yourself from the pack. So when you going down picking each person for your lineup, you have to look and think, how many people will own this player? Are there any other players that I could potentially see having just as big as game, but a little bit cheaper on the salary end? And sometimes you'll use up all your salary, sometimes you'll have $200 left over. It is fine to have money left over on your salary, because you're trying to get a contrarian lineup, so then when you hit on 2 or 3 of your players, there won't be a lot of people owning those players, and that will bump you up the standings a lot more than picking your Aaron Rodgers and Antonio Brown, and then they go off and score 40 points each, but 60-70% of the people in the league got those same 40 points, so you stay right there where you're at. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these tournaments. So you go to the FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever you want, and then go to the NFL tab, and then you want to choose tournaments. And then these will filter all of the tournaments that are available for that week's play. So the first thing that I want to say that you need to watch out for is on FanDuel, this little orange dot means multi-entry. I personally try to avoid as many multi-entry tournaments as I possibly can, because all that does is open the door for these people to do these stupid, crazy lineups that they would never do if you had to put their rent on it. And they end up hitting because they may enter 30 lineups, and some random off the wall lineup with players ends up hitting, and they win the big money. And then you have a good solid lineup that you took time and did research on and was prepared, and that one didn't get any payout because they do all these random lineups. So I personally say try to stay away from as many multi-entries as you can. Stick to the single entry tournaments. Your luck will be much better in a single entry. However though, the one tournament I do say that you want to do every week, and that's the big one that you see promoted all the time, which is where you can win $1 million for the top prize. And so I always say do that, because like I said, we build our bankroll up through the 50-50s because it's much easier to get paid out on, and now we have some money to play with. We can go risk it on some of these tournaments. So you look at this tournament right here, but look, first thing I look is how many people are in the tournaments. Right here, there's 92,485 slots available. So far, 21,101 people have entered, and you know that's going to be full by the time the first weekend of football comes around. So you want to pay attention to multi-entry or single entry. You want to pay attention to how many people are in the contest, just so you can get a gauge, and then you look at the prize payouts. So what other contests are good other than the $1 million one? Well, let's take a look. Right here we have a $5 contest, and the grand total payout is 1 million. So if you click on the actual number, you'll bring up the list of the payout structure. So if you win first, you're getting paid out $100,000, which, you know, I'll take that. You'll probably take that. Whereas you click on the $2 million prize pool, and then that's where you see is $200,000 for first place. Now there will be, as more people enter, there will be $1 million tournaments. I already seen one on DraftKings. It was only a $3 entry, and first place wins $1 million. So you always want to click on the prize amount to see what your payouts are. So if you scroll down, you look at this one. This is 300 bucks. If you're at that point, go ahead, roll the dice. But we're working on building up our bankroll because we're not big ballers going in there with $1,000 in our bank account on our daily fantasy sites. So I'll scroll down, and here's a good one. Here's a $12 one. It's a multi-entry, so you got to be aware of that. And there's 28,901 spots available. So your odds are much better with 28,000 people than 92,000 people. But it all depends on what do you want to play for, what do you want to win, because you want to look at the prize pool. And we click on the $12 one, you see the first prize is $50, you know. And then so you can scroll, and there's $2 ones with 115 people in there. There's $100 tournaments. There's all these different types, but me personally, I like to stick to the $125 tournament if it's on FanDuel or DraftKings, whichever one you can win $1 million. And then from there, I try to do $5, $1 tournaments. Hell, $1 tournament, that's when you can kind of experiment and throw some crazy lineup in that you have a hunch on and see how it pays out, because you're only losing $1. And you see with this dollar one right here, it's a multi-entry. So if you have $5, then you can make 5, you know, lineups and put them in that. But like I said, I personally try to find these ones down here that are single entries. So like right here, you have a single entry one for $5. So this is only 23,000 people in there. The payout is going to be lower at $7,000, but I mean, do you want to enter all these tournaments time and time again where you have a 1% chance of winning, or do you want to enter also some tournaments where you have maybe a 15-20% chance of winning? It's all relative to how much money you want to spend versus the reward of the payouts. And if it's multi-entry or single entry, I keep saying that because multi-entry and single entry does change the percentage chances of you cashing out in these tournaments. You know, and you scroll down, they have other tournaments, like they call these satellite tournaments, where you can win prizes and these little leagues like that. But what I like to do as far as my default week to week contests that I do are the 50-50s, and then pick 1-2 of these tournaments. And another thing I want to mention is don't go making all these 10-20 different lineups. You limit your chance with so many lineups. So what I like to do, like I said, I usually do 2 to 3 for the 50-50s and about 2 lineups, maybe 3 for the tournaments. But you want them to be the same for the most part, but just change 1 or 2 players without the lineups. Because if you feel confident and you've done your research, roll with the players you got. But if there's 1 or 2 players where you may have a hunch on another player, swap out those 1 or 2 players. But you want to be consistent with the players in your lineups from that week to week, because I promise you it will pay out more in the long run. So to wrap things up, what are my main points of this video? 1, do majority of the 50-50 contest to build up your bankroll and dabble a little bit week to week in the tournament lineups. Number 2, vary your lineups depending on what you're doing. If you're doing a 50-50 lineup, do a more safe lineup to where you know the players you're picking are going to get you about 15 to 20 points. And if you're doing the tournaments, have a more contrarian lineup so you can separate yourself from the pack and not pick so many players that are heavily owned for that week. And then number 3, in the tournament, stay away from the multi-entries. Try to do as many single entries as you can. The $1 million contest will be a multi-entry, but other than that, stay away from multi-entries and do your single entries. And also the last point of this video is to keep your lineups consistent. Don't do 10 lineups and have them all different lineups. Do 3 lineups and enter them 10 times. I promise you, over the long run, you'll be more successful doing it that way. So if you like the video, please subscribe, please like the video. Now as these weeks progress, I'll be doing some lineups. We'll be talking about the player salaries. We'll talk about what are the best contests for that week. We'll go over strategies of which cornerbacks are best, so we can pick players tailored to the matchups on the other side of the field. We're going to come on all of those type of topics on these upcoming videos, so stay tuned and be on the lookout, because together we can do this. Peace.